A jogger, just a regular man out for his daily run, had been following his usual route through a remote wooded area on the outskirts of town. He had no idea that today would be different. Today, he would stumble upon something that would change everything. As he ran along the narrow trail, his foot struck something unusual. It wasn't a rock, nor a branch, but something softer. He bent down to investigate, brushing aside the leaves and dirt, revealing what could only be described as a severed human limb. A foot, bloodied and detached, lay lifeless on the forest floor. His breath caught in his throat, and his pulse quickened. His legs froze, the adrenaline pumping in his veins, but his feet remained rooted to the earth. In a daze, he pulled out his phone, hands trembling as he dialed 911. "I found a body part," he said, his voice shaky. "A severed foot, in the woods. Someone's been hurt, or worse." The dispatcher's voice on the other end of the line was calm, professional, but the gravity of the situation hadn't fully sunk in yet. The jogger's call set in motion something much bigger. A small town, untouched by major crime for years, was about to be rocked to its core. Within the hour, the police were on the scene. Uniformed officers combed through the woods, their flashlights cutting through the darkness, searching for more clues. A few feet from the foot, they found another body part, then another, and another. Each discovery sent a chill through the investigators, until they uncovered what could only be described as a grim puzzle, pieces of a human body, scattered throughout the woods like a twisted trail leading nowhere. The forensics team worked through the night, collecting the remains. The town was on edge, rumors spreading like wildfire. The local news stations quickly picked up the story, reporting that a young man named Aaron, a 25-year-old man who had been missing for over a month, was believed to be the victim. Aaron's disappearance had initially seemed like a tragic, but not uncommon, case of a young man running away or falling into trouble. His family had been frantic, posting flyers and pleading for help, but as days turned into weeks without a single lead, hope had begun to fade. Now, the remains found in the woods confirmed the worst. Aaron had been murdered, and whoever had done this was still out there. Detective Harper had seen her fair share of gruesome crime scenes, but nothing like this. The severed limbs, the scattered remains, it was the kind of case that haunted you long after the investigation ended. Harper was known for solving the toughest cases, the ones that others couldn't crack. Her sharp intuition and meticulous approach had earned her respect, and today, she needed every ounce of her expertise. The forensic analysis confirmed the worst, these were indeed the remains of Aaron. But there was a mystery: how had he ended up here, mutilated and discarded like a piece of trash? And more importantly, who had done it? Aaron's family was devastated, but they held on to one shred of hope. They had mentioned something to the police during the investigation, a clue that might have seemed insignificant at first, but now it was the only lead they had. Aaron had recently started dating someone new. A woman named Olivia. Harper knew she had to follow this lead. If Aaron's relationship with Olivia had been recent, there was a chance she might know something, maybe even something about his disappearance. She pulled up Olivia's records. Olivia Larson, 28 years old, living alone in an apartment downtown. The name didn't ring a bell, but then again, Harper wasn't sure what she was expecting. Harper didn't waste time. She paid a visit to Olivia's apartment the next day, her mind racing with the possibility that Olivia might hold the key to unlocking this case. As she knocked on the door, her thoughts swirled with questions. Had Olivia known something about Aaron's fate? Or worse, had she been involved in his disappearance? When Olivia answered the door, Harper was met with a calm, almost vacant expression. There was something about her that felt off, her eyes, too wide, too unblinking. But Harper wasn't about to jump to conclusions. She had learned long ago that appearances could be deceiving. "Detective Harper," she said, introducing herself. "I'm investigating the disappearance of Aaron Mitchell. I understand you two were close." Olivia nodded slowly. "Yes, we were. close. Her voice was soft, almost whispery, as if she were unsure of her own words. I haven't seen him in weeks. I don't know what happened to him. Harper studied her carefully. Olivia's demeanor seemed genuine, but there was an underlying tension, a sense of unease in her words. It was almost as if she was hiding something she wasn't ready to share. Do you know anyone who might have wanted to harm him? Harper pressed. Anyone who might have had a reason to hurt him? Olivia's gaze flickered, her lips pressing into a tight line. No, no one. He was a good person. We had a good relationship. Harper wasn't convinced. I'm sure you're not involved, but I'd like to ask you some more questions. You can either come down to the station, or I can continue here, but I need to know everything you can tell me about Aaron. Olivia hesitated for a moment before nodding, agreeing to go down to the station. Harper could tell she was nervous, but whether it was because of guilt or fear, she couldn't yet tell. As they left her apartment, Harper couldn't shake the feeling that Olivia knew more than she was letting on. Maybe, just maybe, she had been a part of something far darker than anyone could have imagined. But Detective Harper had learned not to trust first impressions. There was always more to the story. And Olivia, with her strange mannerisms and odd responses, seemed to be at the heart of this mystery. Olivia Larson's childhood was a far cry from the carefree innocence most children experienced. From the moment she was born, her life was steeped in isolation, imposed by a controlling mother who ruled her world with iron fists and irrational fears. Her mother, Eleanor Larson, believed in strict discipline and even stricter diets. Olivia was forbidden from eating normal meals like her peers, no candies, no fast food, no comfort foods. Instead, she was raised on bland vegetables, grains, and the occasional meat, which Eleanor insisted was prepared under the most exacting conditions. Any deviation from the regimen was met with harsh reprimands. Olivia's mother's rules didn't just extend to what she ate, they controlled every aspect of her life. Playdates were forbidden, friendships discouraged. Eleanor made sure her daughter was a quiet, obedient presence, avoiding the world beyond their home. Olivia's world was limited to the walls of their house, the small garden outside, and the occasional trip to the grocery store, where she was allowed only a few glimpses of normalcy, never enough to make her feel part of the world. But, in her isolation, Olivia developed a quiet rebellion. She would often watch the children in the neighborhood play, laughing together, sharing food, and experiencing things she could never have. Her heart would ache with longing as she stared at their carefree lives. When Olivia's mother passed away unexpectedly, Olivia was freed from the oppressive rules that had governed her for so long. In the wake of her mother's death, Olivia found herself in a world she had never known, one of freedom, independence, and possibilities she had never been allowed to consider. Her life, once marked by restriction, now lay open before her. It was then that she moved to the city. The vastness of it overwhelmed her at first, but it also exhilarated her. No longer would she be confined to the sterile home and rigid rules of her mother. No longer would she be a silent observer of life. The city gave her a chance to reinvent herself, to live out the dreams she had once been denied. She quickly became accustomed to the fast-paced lifestyle of the city. In time, Olivia found work as an administrative assistant, a job that didn't demand much of her but allowed her to meet people, to feel part of something. She made a few acquaintances, but deep inside, she still felt that familiar sense of loneliness, the nagging feeling that she didn't quite belong. It wasn't until she met Aaron that things began to change. Aaron was charming, kind, and warm, everything Olivia had longed for but never received. He made her feel seen, heard, and valued. Their connection was instant, a bond that seemed to come effortlessly. He was outgoing, adventurous, and far more experienced in the ways of the world than Olivia. For the first time in her life, Olivia felt special, desired. Aaron's touch, his attention, made her feel like she was finally part of something real, something that transcended the limitations of her past. Their relationship blossomed quickly. Aaron showered her with affection, taking her to dinners, buying her gifts, and introducing her to his friends. Olivia reveled in it all. Finally, she was part of something. But as much as Aaron gave her, Olivia found herself wanting more. She feared that one day he would see the girl beneath the facade, the girl who had spent her whole life in the shadows, hidden from the world. She feared that Aaron, too, would grow bored of her, just as others had before. That's when Aaron made a suggestion, an idea that would start her down a path she could never return from. One evening, as they sat together in his apartment, the atmosphere heavy with intimacy, Aaron looked into Olivia's eyes and said, "I want to prove to you how much I trust you. I want to show you just how much I care." Olivia was intrigued. Aaron had already done so much for her, but this sounded different. "I want us to share something special. Something deeper," he continued, his voice almost conspiratorial. "I want to share a part of me with you, something only I can give." Olivia tilted her head, confused but intrigued. "What do you mean?" Aaron reached for a knife from the kitchen drawer and showed her a patch of his own skin, then pointed to his arm. "I want you to have a piece of me. I want you to eat it." At first, Olivia recoiled in shock. "Aaron, I don't understand." "It's something I read about," he explained, his voice calm, almost hypnotic. "It's an ancient ritual of bonding. People who truly trust each other do this. It's the ultimate act of love, of commitment. You trust me, right?" Olivia hesitated, repulsed by the idea. But there was something in his eyes, something in his voice that made her pause. The thought of losing him terrified her. She wanted to belong to him, wanted to prove to him that she could share in his life fully, without hesitation. "I trust you," she whispered. Aaron smiled, a glint of satisfaction in his eyes. "Good. Then trust me now." With that, he carefully sliced a small piece of flesh from his own arm, his face contorting in mild pain. He cooked it lightly, seasoning it to mask the taste. Olivia, overwhelmed by the bizarre nature of what she was about to do, hesitated. But Aaron's gentle coaxing, his insistence that this was something special, made her finally relent. The first bite was horrifying, tough, stringy, and foreign. It tasted unlike anything she had ever eaten. Her stomach churned, and for a moment, she almost lost control. But as she swallowed, something strange happened. The taste lingered in her mouth, and a peculiar hunger began to grow inside her. It wasn't a hunger for more of the same, it was something primal, something darker. She didn't fully understand it, but she needed more. Olivia's obsession with the taste of human flesh grew stronger each day. She thought about it constantly, how it filled the emptiness she had carried for so long, how it made her feel connected to something deeper. At first, she tried to convince herself that it was a momentary lapse, a strange experiment that would soon fade. But the hunger didn't fade. It only intensified. Aaron, noticing the change in her, began to withdraw. He was no longer comfortable with what they were doing. He had introduced the idea to her in the hope of deepening their bond, but now he felt repulsed by what had become of their connection. He could no longer offer her the small pieces of his flesh that had once seemed like a meaningful gesture. The thought of giving her more, of feeding her insatiable craving, was unbearable. He became distant, avoiding Olivia's calls, and canceling plans. This rejection hurt Olivia more than she expected. Her mind spiraled, desperate to hold on to the connection they had. She felt herself slipping into madness, the need for more growing unbearable. She couldn't lose him, not now, not when she had tasted what she believed was the key to everything. She was willing to do anything to keep him. One evening, Aaron arrived at Olivia's apartment after a long absence. His eyes were weary, his face filled with concern. Olivia greeted him warmly, but beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. She prepared dinner, trying to act normal, but inside, her mind was racing. This would be the night. After dinner, Olivia offered Aaron a drink, a special one she had prepared herself. She had laced it with a powerful sedative, just enough to knock him out. Aaron, tired and unsuspecting, took a sip without hesitation. Within minutes, he slumped forward, unconscious. Olivia moved quickly, her pulse racing as she carried out her plan. She had prepared herself for this moment, mentally rehearsing the steps. She dismembered Aaron's body with eerie precision, methodically cutting him into pieces, just as she had fantasized about. The freezer in her apartment became her new repository, filled with what she considered her greatest treasure. As she worked, a strange sense of satisfaction washed over her. This was the ultimate act of possession, the most intimate thing she could do. And now, she could feast on him, savoring his flesh as she had dreamed. The hunger inside her quieted, but only for a moment. After Aaron's grisly murder, Olivia's addiction to the taste of human flesh grew uncontrollable. The brief satisfaction she had felt after consuming Aaron's remains quickly faded, and the hunger returned with an even greater intensity. She had tasted the forbidden, and now nothing could fill the emptiness inside her. For days, she remained locked in her apartment, consumed by the memory of her crime, struggling with the growing cravings. She had exhausted what was left of Aaron's body, and there was nothing left to satiate her hunger. But she knew she couldn't stop. It had become more than a desire, it was a need, a dark compulsion that drove her to seek more. She turned back to dating apps, scanning profiles for the next man to seduce, to lure into her twisted web. Olivia was meticulous in choosing her victims. She wanted someone isolated, someone who wouldn't be missed, someone who wouldn't raise suspicion. She learned quickly how to manipulate, how to play the part of the lonely woman, seeking companionship. It wasn't long before she met another man, someone new, someone who seemed to fit the bill perfectly. This man, however, was different from Aaron. His name was James, a soft-spoken and somewhat withdrawn individual, someone who quickly fell under Olivia's spell. Their conversations began innocently enough, with Olivia playing the role of the vulnerable woman, hiding her darkness behind a mask of charm and sweetness. Olivia knew what she was doing. She knew how to make him feel needed, how to make him believe he was important to her. Their connection deepened, and soon they were spending more and more time together. But with each passing day, Olivia's hunger grew. She started to prepare for the inevitable, making plans to turn her growing obsession into another gruesome act. This time, she was careful. She knew James was cautious, and she had to be more subtle. She invited him to her apartment one evening, offering him a dinner she had cooked herself. James, trusting and unsuspecting, accepted the invitation without hesitation. The night unfolded like many before it. They shared a meal, chatted about their lives, and Olivia listened to his stories with feigned interest. But beneath the surface, her thoughts were consumed by her dark desires. She was biding her time, waiting for the right moment. After dinner, Olivia suggested they watch a movie, but she had already prepared a plan. As they sat on the couch, she subtly slipped a sedative into his drink, just as she had done with Aaron. It didn't take long for James to feel the effects, his words slowing, his body growing heavier. Olivia kept up the conversation, her heart racing in anticipation as he finally succumbed to the drug. When James fell unconscious, Olivia wasted no time. She had rehearsed the steps in her mind countless times. She grabbed the knife from the kitchen and set to work with cold precision, dismembering his body. The fear and hesitation she had once felt were gone, replaced by an overwhelming sense of control and satisfaction. She stored the pieces in her freezer, just as she had with Aaron. The hunger had been sated, for now. Days passed, and Olivia savored her twisted feast, consuming James's remains with an insatiable hunger. But soon, once again, the cravings returned. She could no longer satisfy the dark void inside her with just one victim. The hunger had become an endless cycle, a loop that would never be broken. Olivia's behavior became more erratic. She began to spend more time looking for new targets, seeking out the next unsuspecting man she could lure into her web. She turned to bars, dating apps, and social gatherings, each time pretending to be the same vulnerable woman in need of love. But inside, she was a predator, a monster in disguise. This time, Olivia's actions did not go unnoticed. A young man, Ryan, who had begun seeing Olivia casually, started noticing strange things. He noticed how Olivia often disappeared for hours at a time, how she became oddly distant after their interactions. Ryan also heard rumors from mutual acquaintances about the disappearance of another man, one who had been close to Olivia before he had gone missing. Ryan's suspicions began to grow. He started questioning Olivia more, but she deflected, using her charm and manipulation to keep him in the dark. She told him stories about her troubled past, about how she had been hurt in relationships, all in an attempt to make him feel sorry for her. But Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. There were inconsistencies in Olivia's story, things that didn't add up. He began to quietly investigate, asking around about the missing men. His search led him to some unsettling conclusions. One evening, Ryan visited Olivia's apartment, hoping to confront her with his suspicions. He found her in a state of nervous tension, and something in her eyes made him realize that he had uncovered something dark, something terrible. Olivia, realizing that Ryan had started to piece things together, tried to play it off, but her facade was cracking. Ryan confronted her, demanding the truth. Olivia's heart raced, and she knew she couldn't let him walk away. Desperation took hold of her. She tried to sedate him, but Ryan was quicker. A struggle ensued, with Ryan fighting to break free of her grip. In the chaos, he managed to escape her apartment, bruised and terrified, and ran straight to the police station. Detective Harper, now leading the investigation into the missing men, took Ryan's report seriously. The details he provided about Olivia's strange behavior and his own near miss with her only confirmed Harper's worst suspicions. It was time to act. The police moved swiftly, raiding Olivia's apartment. What they found inside was even worse than they had imagined. The freezer was filled with remains, pieces of James's body, along with remnants of other victims. Forensic analysis confirmed the gruesome truth: Olivia had been hunting, killing, and feeding on men for months. The arrest of Olivia shattered the calm of the city. Detective Harper had always prided herself on solving tough cases, but even she had been taken aback by the depravity that had unfolded in this quiet corner of the world. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place as the police uncovered more evidence: photographs, keepsakes, and notes, remnants of the twisted life Olivia had led. The freezer in Olivia's apartment had been the key, and the discovery of human remains within it confirmed every gruesome theory the investigators had suspected. But the horror didn't end with the bodies they found. Olivia, during her interrogation, revealed far more than they had expected. Sitting across from Detective Harper in the sterile, cold room of the interrogation unit, Olivia appeared calm, almost detached. There was no hint of fear in her eyes, only a strange emptiness. She seemed to have reconciled with what she had done, as if it were the only truth she could grasp. "I couldn't help it," Olivia whispered, almost to herself. "It wasn't something I wanted, not really. But once I tasted it, I couldn't stop." Detective Harper listened intently, her mind processing the disturbing confession. Olivia's words were chilling but truthful. She described in graphic detail the process of seducing each of her victims, how she lured them with her charm, how she fed them lies about love and loneliness. But in the end, it was always about the hunger, an insatiable craving that drove her to do the unthinkable. She led the investigators to several locations where she had hidden parts of her victims' remains. There were no signs of remorse or guilt in her tone, only the coldness of someone who had become numb to the horror she had inflicted. "I knew it was wrong," Olivia continued, "but at the same time, I didn't. It became part of me. It was the only thing that made me feel alive. Her trial was swift, the evidence overwhelming. The media flocked to cover the gruesome details of the case, and Olivia's name became synonymous with horror. The courtroom was filled with the grieving families of her victims, all seeking justice for their loved ones, for the lives that Olivia had destroyed. Despite the overwhelming evidence against her, Olivia showed no signs of remorse. When asked why she did it, her response was chillingly simple: because I needed it. I needed them, and I couldn't stop. The court found her guilty on all charges. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Olivia's fate was sealed, and she was escorted to a high-security facility, where she would spend the rest of her days behind bars, a prisoner to her own dark desires. But Olivia's story didn't end there. From her cell, she wrote letters to various media outlets, describing her actions in detail, as if she were trying to justify them. She spoke of the thrill, the power, and the addiction. Some of her letters were published, sparking debates about the nature of addiction, obsession, and the darkness that can exist within people. And though Olivia's body was confined to a cell, her mind remained free, constantly reliving the twisted satisfaction she had once felt. She had become a legend, a symbol of the dangers of unchecked desires, a reminder that sometimes the darkest parts of the human soul are not easily contained. As the story of Olivia's monstrous descent into cannibalism came to a close, one thing became undeniably clear: beneath the surface of even the most ordinary lives, there can lie unspeakable horrors. The boundaries between human decency and savagery can be thinner than we care to imagine, and sometimes, the darkest instincts find their way to the surface. But for those who are still seeking answers, who want to hear more stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to Truth and Terrors. There are many more tales lurking in the shadows, waiting to be told. Join us, and together we'll uncover the twisted secrets that lie hidden beneath the surface of the world we know. Thank you for listening to this chilling tale. Don't forget to subscribe for more.